My sister wanted everything I had, but she couldn't handle the one secret I revealed about her. She thought she could steal my life, but one truth destroyed her illusions. My sister Beatrice had always wanted what I had. When we were little, if I got a doll, she'd cry until my parents bought her the same one. If I earned a good grade, she would sulk until someone reassured her she was just as smart. I thought it was just a phase, typical sibling rivalry. But as we grew older, that envy didn't go away, it only sharpened. By the time I was 28, I had built a career I was proud of. I worked long nights, sacrificed weekends, and slowly climbed my way up in a competitive industry. I finally had my own apartment, a car I'd bought with my own money, and a circle of friends I truly trusted. And yet, every time Beatrice visited, I could see the calculation in her eyes. She'd comment on my furniture, my clothes, my friends, even my boyfriend David, as if silently measuring how all of it should have been hers. At first, I ignored it. I loved her. She was my sister, after all. If she borrowed my clothes or casually flirted with David at family gatherings, I brushed it off. But envy is like a slow leak in a boat. You don't notice until you're sinking. And one night, everything crashed in a way I could never have imagined. It was supposed to be a celebration. I had just gotten a huge promotion, the kind that came with a salary bump and real recognition. I invited Beatrice and David out for dinner at an Italian place I loved. I wanted to share my joy with the two people closest to me. But when they arrived, I noticed their hands brushing a little too often, their smiles too rehearsed. I told myself I was being paranoid. Halfway through my glass of wine, Beatrice set down her fork, looked me straight in the eyes, and said, "I'm pregnant. And David is the father." The room spun. For a second, I thought I had misheard. But the way David avoided my gaze, his fingers tightening over hers, confirmed everything. My sister hadn't just wanted what I had, she had taken it. I sat there frozen, while she leaned back, almost smug. And in that silence, a thought pulsed through me. They thought I would break. They thought I would collapse in that restaurant, humiliated and destroyed. But they didn't know the one secret I had about Beatrice, a secret she would never survive being exposed. And in that moment, I decided it was time to finally use it. The silence at that restaurant was unbearable. Beatrice sat across from me, her fingers still entwined with David's, as if flaunting the betrayal. My mind screamed, but my body was calm, almost cold. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. Instead, I paid my part of the bill, stood up, and left. The confused faces of the couple I had once called my family burned into my memory. At home, the numbness set in. My apartment looked the same, David's clothes still in the closet, his toothbrush in the bathroom, his shoes by the door. The familiarity of it all clashed with the fact that my marriage had just ended in a public execution carried out by my own sister. That night, I didn't sleep. I walked from room to room, replaying every conversation, every suspicious look, every moment I had ignored. By dawn, the anger was stronger than the pain. They wanted me broken, but what they didn't know was that I had leverage. A secret. Beatrice had made sure the world believed she was sweet, fragile, the victim of being the less successful sister. But I had proof of the things she'd hidden for years. Proof that would shatter her perfect little mask. Later that day, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Beatrice. "We didn't mean to hurt you. But love is love. Please understand." I almost laughed. Love? No. This wasn't about love. This was about wanting everything I had. And if she thought she could handle the consequences of stealing my husband, she was about to learn how heavy the truth really was. The following week, I kept my distance. David didn't come back home, and Beatrice pretended like nothing had happened. My parents called me once, urging me to be understanding. As if betrayal was something you could swallow with a glass of water and a smile. I didn't argue. I let them talk. Because I had already decided, when the time came, I wouldn't just defend myself. I would end their little fantasy. The secret I carried wasn't something small. Years ago, Beatrice had been caught stealing from her previous job, a boutique where she worked as an assistant manager. She had taken cash from the register, and when the owners confronted her, she begged me to cover for her. I did. I paid part of the missing money, convinced them not to press charges, and she swore she'd never forget my help. Of course, she did forget, or rather pretended to. Now, As I stared at her text messages full of fake apologies, I remembered every detail of that night. I still had the receipts from my bank withdrawal. I still had the email she had written, panicked, asking me to save her. She thought those files were long gone. But I had kept everything. That weekend, my cousin threw a family gathering. Against my better judgment, I went. Beatrice was there, glowing, her hand brushing her still flat stomach, David at her side like some prize she had won. They smiled, whispered, and acted as though I had never existed. And then my aunt raised her glass, to new beginnings. To Beatrice, who is finally building the life she deserves. That was the moment I felt something snap inside me. They wanted to celebrate her at my expense. They wanted to erase me. I stood up, my glass in hand, and with a steady voice I said, if we're talking about what people deserve, then maybe it's time I tell you who Beatrice really is. Every eye in the room turned toward me. Beatrice froze, her smile slipping. She knew. She remembered. And for the first time, she looked afraid. The room fell into a thick silence, the kind that makes your heartbeat sound louder than the voices around you. Beatrice tried to laugh it off, waving her hand dismissively. "Oh, come on, Marina, don't make a scene," she said, her voice trembling slightly. David looked between us, confused, his arm tightening around her shoulders. But I wasn't smiling. "Do you remember that job at the boutique?" I asked, my eyes locked on hers. Her face drained of color. No one else knew what I was talking about, but she did. "What job?" my aunt asked, curious. I set my glass down and leaned forward. "The one where the owner almost pressed charges for theft. The one where thousands of dollars disappeared. The one I covered so Beatrice wouldn't end up with a criminal record." Gasps echoed around the table. Beatrice stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "She's lying," she blurted out. But her voice was too sharp, too defensive. David frowned. "Is that true?" he asked slowly. He wasn't angry yet, just cautious, like he already suspected the answer. "She's making it up," Beatrice insisted, her hands shaking now. "Why would I ever steal?" I pulled out my phone and scrolled until I found it, the old email she had sent me at midnight years ago, begging me to help her. I turned the screen so the nearest relatives could see. "Because you did. And because you never stopped wanting what wasn't yours." The whispers started, sharp and quick, bouncing around the room. Beatrice's perfect little image, the sweet younger sister, the victim, was collapsing right in front of her. She opened her mouth to defend herself, but the look in David's eyes silenced her. It was the first time he didn't look at me with guilt, but at her with suspicion. And I knew in that moment that I had only just begun. Beatrice's hands shook as she tried to snatch the phone from me, but I pulled it back before she could touch it. "Stop it," she snapped, her voice cracking. "This isn't the time or the place." "Oh, but you thought a fancy restaurant was the right place to announce that you were pregnant with my husband's child," I said calmly, my words slicing sharper than any shout could. A ripple of gasps traveled around the table. David stood frozen, his jaw tight. "Beatrice, is this true?" His voice was low, dangerous. She shook her head furiously, eyes darting between us. "She's twisting things. She's jealous, she always has been." "Jealous?" I cut her off, my laughter cold. "I had the career, the home, the marriage, everything you said you wanted. And now you think you've taken it all. But tell me, Beatrice, do you really think David will stay once he knows the truth about you?" The room buzzed with murmurs, relatives exchanging uneasy glances. My mother tried to intervene, her voice sharp. "Enough, Marina. Don't drag family matters into this." But I didn't stop. Family matters? Covering up theft for your golden daughter was a family matter. Watching her destroy my marriage, apparently that's a family matter too. So yes, I think everyone here deserves to know exactly who they're praising tonight. Beatrice's face crumpled. She looked small, cornered, like the child I once rescued when she messed up. Only this time, there would be no saving her. David pushed back his chair slowly, never taking his eyes off her. "We'll talk about this," he muttered, his voice tight with disgust. But I could already see the decision forming in his eyes. And for the first time since that dinner, I felt something close to peace. The party dissolved after that. Conversations that had once centered on Beatrice's new beginning shifted into whispers behind cupped hands. Some relatives avoided her eyes, others glared at me as if I'd broken an unspoken rule, but none of it mattered. The truth was finally out, and she couldn't control the narrative anymore. When David stormed out, Beatrice chased after him, begging, pleading, her voice shrill enough to carry across the courtyard. I stayed behind, letting the scene unfold. People approached me cautiously, my aunt, my cousin, asking if it was all real. I simply nodded. I didn't need to embellish anything. The evidence spoke for itself. Later that night, my phone buzzed again. Dozens of messages from Beatrice, alternating between rage and desperation. You ruined my life. You always wanted to destroy me. Please, don't tell anyone else. I'll do anything. I stared at those words for a long time. The same sister who had sat in front of me, proudly holding my husband's hand, was now reduced to begging me in text messages. But the irony wasn't lost on me. She had already destroyed her own life. I had just pulled the curtain back. A few hours later, David called. His voice was calm, but colder than I'd ever heard it. I moved my things out of your apartment, he said. And Beatrice's too. Don't worry, I won't be in your way anymore. But I needed to know the truth about her. Now I do. When I hung up, I sat in silence, staring at the city lights outside my window. I felt lighter, almost free. For years, I'd carried her secret like a stone in my chest. Finally, I had dropped it. But a small part of me wondered, would she try to come after me again? Because envy doesn't die easily. The following week was chaos. Beatrice stopped showing up at family gatherings, and when she did, she looked like a shadow of herself, pale, nervous, snapping at anyone who dared to bring up the boutique incident. David avoided her entirely. Word spread quickly, and in our family, gossip traveled faster than facts. It didn't matter if she denied it. The damage was permanent. At work, though, I was thriving. My promotion felt even sweeter now because I no longer carried the weight of her jealousy on my back. For once, I could walk into my office without wondering how Beatrice would twist it into a competition. Still, I wasn't naive. I knew she wasn't the type to give up easily. And I was right. One night, just as I was preparing to leave the office, my phone rang. It was Beatrice. I hesitated but answered. Her voice was frantic, trembling. Marina, please. You have to help me. David left. He won't answer my calls. And now Mom and Dad won't even defend me. They think I'm a criminal because of what you said. I closed my eyes, letting the silence stretch. Then I asked the question I had waited years to say. Why, Beatrice? Why did you need to take everything from me? Wasn't it enough that I saved you once? She sniffled, her voice breaking. Because you always had it all. You were the smart one, the successful one, the one everyone respected. I just wanted to feel like I mattered. Her words stung, not because they were true, but because they revealed just how empty she really felt. For a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. But then I remembered the way she smiled in that restaurant, holding my husband's hand as if it were a trophy. And my pity turned to steel. I helped you once, I said coldly. And you betrayed me. This time, you're on your own. She started crying harder, but I ended the call. My hands shook, but not from regret, from release. For the first time, I had truly let her go. Days turned into weeks, and I didn't hear from Beatrice again. At least, not directly. But traces of her desperation reached me anyway, through relatives who whispered that she had been fired from her job, through friends who mentioned she was selling her furniture online, through social media posts where she tried to project happiness while clearly unraveling. Meanwhile, David called me once more. Not to reconcile, that door was closed forever, but to apologize. I thought I knew her, he admitted quietly. But I didn't. And I didn't deserve you either. I see that now. His words should have comforted me, but instead they left me with a strange emptiness. Closure maybe, but not relief. One Saturday, while I was out shopping, I ran into Beatrice. She looked smaller somehow, her hair unkempt, her eyes swollen from crying. She froze when she saw me, then whispered, "You destroyed me." I stared back at her. "No, Beatrice. You destroyed yourself. I just stopped protecting you." Her lips trembled, but she had no answer. She turned away, disappearing into the crowd like a ghost. That night, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, thinking about everything that had happened. For years, I believed it was my job to shield her, to carry her mistakes, to make sure she didn't collapse under the weight of her own envy. But in doing so, I had only enabled her to hurt me deeper. The secret I revealed hadn't just exposed her to others, it had freed me from her grip. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. People like Beatrice didn't just fade quietly. And deep down, I knew she would try to claw her way back into my life again. I was right. Beatrice didn't disappear quietly. One evening, I received an email from an unknown address. The subject line read, "You think you've won?" My stomach tightened as I opened it. Inside was a rambling message, accusing me of ruining her life, of poisoning the family against her, of stealing David's love even though he had left us both. She ended it with a threat, "If I go down, I'm taking you with me." For a moment, the old fear crept back. I knew how manipulative she could be, how good she was at twisting stories, until even I questioned my own memories. But this time, I refused to be intimidated. I forwarded the email to myself, saved screenshots, and closed my laptop. Evidence, I reminded myself. Always keep the evidence. That weekend, during another family gathering, my uncle pulled me aside. "She's been telling everyone you made up the theft story just to humiliate her," he said cautiously. "But nobody believes her anymore. She's lost her credibility." His words hit me harder than I expected. For so long, Beatrice had been the center of attention, the golden child who could do no wrong. And now, her lies were unraveling faster than she could spin them. For once, the truth was louder than her voice. Later that night, as I drove home, I thought about what she had written, taking me down with her. But there was nothing left she could use against me. I had lived my life openly, worked hard for every step I'd taken. The only secrets I had ever kept were hers. And now, those were no longer my burden. As I pulled into my driveway, I realized something with a clarity that made me exhale in relief. Beatrice wasn't my responsibility anymore. Weeks passed, and for the first time in years, I felt free. My apartment was quiet, my work fulfilling, and my evenings finally belonged to me instead of endless damage control for Beatrice's mistakes. It was strange at first, like stepping out of a storm and realizing the sun had been there all along. One afternoon, I received a call from my mother. Her voice was weary, softened by something I hadn't heard in years, humility. "Marina, maybe we were wrong. Maybe we should have seen what Beatrice was doing all along." I didn't argue. I didn't say, "I told you so." I simply listened because I no longer needed their validation. I had already won back my own peace. As for Beatrice, I heard she moved to another city. Some said she was trying to start over. Others whispered she was chasing another man, another life that didn't belong to her. I didn't ask and I didn't care. For once, her choices were hers to carry, not mine. On my balcony that night, I raised the glass to myself. To the girl who once believed protecting her sister was more important than protecting her own happiness. To the woman who finally understood that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is step back and let the truth speak for itself. Beatrice wanted everything I had, my career, my home, even my marriage. But the one thing she could never take from me was the strength I found when I revealed her secret. And in the end, that truth was the only thing I needed to finally be free.